To start 2020, I want to say, obviously, the last couple months, the show's been a little in flux. There have been 4 people who have been instrumental in helping us through 2019. Brian Westbrook, Chris Caney, Chris Broussard, and Bart Scott. 2 of them aren't here. The 2 that are here. Thank you guys so much for everything you've done. And thank you for helping us out today while I'm doing something I've never done before in my life. We begin in Dallas, where Jason Garrett is still the Cowboys head coach somehow. He met with Jerry Jones on Monday and Tuesday as well, and will reportedly resume his discussions for his future for a 3rd time today. Garrett's contract expires January 14th. Candy, I'm going to start with you. Feels a little Groundhog Day-ish. Is there any way at the end of these discussions Jason Garrett remains the Cowboys head coach for next season?
No shot. And we knew what Jason Garrett's fate was going to be if this team didn't realize their expectations, meaning compete for a championship. We all speculated going into 2019, if they don't at least get to the conference championship game, that they were probably going to transition away from Jason Garrett. And Jerry Jones let everybody know that. And the way he did it was not extending Jason Garrett. He allowed him to go into 2019 as a lame duck head coach. No team in the NFL wants to do that. They want their coaches to have job security because most organizations understand the importance of empowering your head coach, giving them the authority with the players in the locker room. But Jerry Jones didn't do that. So we all knew that if this team fell short, that they were going to part company with Jason Garrett. But what makes this one a little more complicated is the personal relationship. Jason Garrett, former quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. He was one of the coveted assistants that Jerry Jones went after in 2007 after he moved on from Bill Parcells. Ended up hiring Jason Garrett as the offensive coordinator before they hired Wade Phillips as the head coach. So you knew that Jason Garrett eventually was going to be elevated to head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. But here we are in 2019, a decade after they made him the head coach in 2010, and he still has not produced the results that Jerry Jones is looking for. And so, yeah, I don't think there's any question mark about whether or not they're moving on from Jason Garrett. I think that's a foregone conclusion. The only question is, who's going to be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and when are they going to make that decision?
Yeah, I think that, of course, Jason Garrett, he will get fired. I think at this point, I've been wondering about this and thinking about it all night long, and I have to believe that Jerry Jones has invested so much into Jason Garrett at this point. I have to believe that they're trying to do something in the front office. He has to be trying to make a decision. Hey, Jason, do you want to coach, or are you willing to be in some capacity in our front office? Are you willing to do different things for the organization? Just like you mentioned, he was a player coach sitting in on meetings when he was a backup. He was a guy that was an assistant for a long time, and then he was a coach for a very long time. That message got stale to the players. But at the end of the day, it's production. Can you put that production on the field? Jason Garrett couldn't get it done because the message was stale. But I think Jerry Jones has invested so much in him that he wants him to stay. He wants him to be around that organization in some way. I think that's why you have these meetings for 2 or 3 days.
So I think there's 3 at this point viable paths. Not even necessarily viable, just possible paths. One is he's about to get a new contract, a contract extension, because since his contract does expire in a couple weeks, you know you can't just retain him a la what the Colts did with Chuck Pagano. If you guys remember, it looked like Chuck Pagano was out after back-to-back 8-8 seasons. He went into first meeting with Jim Irsay, second meeting with Jim Irsay. He and Ryan Grigson supposedly patched things up, and they just said, we won't fire you. We will let you continue on the contract you're under. For Jason Garrett, it's different. The only way he can be the head coach next year is if they give him a brand new contract. So I think that's the least viable path, the least likely path. The second one is what you said, which is they are looking for a soft landing spot. That they want it to be Jason Garrett is still with the Cowboys organization. However, it is not in the capacity as head coach. It's senior advisor. It's something in the front office, something like that, so he can continue on with the organization. The third one is this. Jerry Jones decided after that Patriot game, I am firing my head coach, and the reason he has not yet done it is because we are sitting here on January 2nd. The Cowboys have been essentially eliminated from the playoffs for a week and a half, and yet on shows like this and on radio, television in Dallas, they are still not only one of the headlines, at times like today, the lead headline. Jerry Jones, what is he best at? Marketing. The Dallas Cowboys, we talk about them like the Lakers and Yankees because of the valuation of the Lakers and Yankees, because they are the pristine franchises in their respective sports. Yet the Lakers and Yankees win. Every single decade they compete for championships. The discrepancy between the Cowboys' Q rating, if you will, and their actual success on the field is greater than the discrepancy in any sport for any of their top flight teams. And I do wonder if part of this, similarly to the Zeke contract negotiation, like, Are you guys certain, because I'm not, that Jerry hated the Zeke holding out in Cabo? I think Jerry always knew he was getting Zeke signed. Yes, he was probably trying to get it for the best deal possible, but he also understands part of what makes the Cowboys is staying in the news. And they can't stay in the news when they're not in the playoffs unless the only last headline they have is firing the coach and hiring the coach. So you drag this one out seemingly a couple days longer than you need to. The potential downside to that is, does it then cost you your guy? I'll start with you, Canty. Any concern, if you're a Cowboys fan, that this elongated process is going to cost them whomever should be their top candidate?
No, I don't think it'll cost them the guy that they're looking at to be the head coach. But what it could do is limit that head coach's options when it comes to his assistants, because you got to realize there ain't no salary cap when it comes to paying your coaching staff. You can pay the head coach and the assistants whatever you want. And the top assistants around the National Football League will be in high demand. We just saw Ron Rivera get hired by the Redskins, and the first move that he made was hiring Jack Del Rio as his defensive coordinator. So, I mean, you have to understand, if you delay the process in starting the search for your head coach, even if you're using back channels to figure out who's going to be interested in the job, there's also, going through the logistics of allowing your head coach to pick his staff, and that's the one that you don't want to be stuck without a chair when the music stops. So I think that Jerry Jones, and to your point, Nick, I think he does have a flair for the theatrics. He does want to market his franchise, but he also has to understand, I've got to put my next head coach in the very best position to succeed, and that means being able to hire the best supporting staff that you could possibly have. And right now, by dragging this Jason Garrett thing out, I think you're putting your next head coach at a disservice.
One of the reasons why I think he's going to be, and I think you're right about that, when he drags this thing out, I have to believe that he's asking Jason Garrett, well, who do you feel that will match in this locker room? You know the guys. You gave him the opportunity, Jason Garrett, the opportunity to have those exit meetings. You've had a good pulse on these guys for a long time. Maybe Jason Garrett is probably the closest guy, maybe even closer than Jerry Jones, to be able to say, this is the type of guy that you need in this locker room. This is the type of guy that will work well with the guys that you have in that locker room. And even when you think about, if a college coach comes in, maybe it's a college guy that says, Matt Rule, for example, we have our coaches in place. We've won at every stop, Temple and Baylor. And now you could come into an organization that already has a leader in Dak Prescott, already has very good players around the horn when you talk about on the offensive line, running back position, quarterback and wide receiver. Now you just need a guy that can galvanize those people. Maybe that's why you have Jason Garrett still in that building. And then as you push him up to a higher level in the front office, now you're saying, okay, I can remove myself, Jerry Jones, which has been a problem, what a lot of people have said, and now Jason Garrett can be part of the solution of getting the best coach in here.
Well, here's the one thing I will say with that, Brian. If you keep Jason Garrett within the organization in a senior advisory or a consulting role, you're adding another layer onto the job for the next head coach. I mean, it's already a tough position he's going to be in, being able to work with Jerry Jones, not only
now
the
there's
owner,
another
but the general manager. Then you've got Will McClay in the scouting department, and now you're also going to have Jason Garrett as somebody you have to potentially answer to. We always talk about making sure that the head coach is empowered by the owner.
The singular voice. And now, and this would be, we talk about that, you worry, both of you guys talked about the concern that a player, Jason Garrett says X, and a player goes around him to Jerry Jones, find out if it's Y. If you have a new coach in, especially if it's a first-time NFL head coach like Matt Rule, he can say X. They can then go to their former head coach, Jason Garrett, who says Y, and then check with Jerry, who says Z. It would not be a streamlined organization. I agree with that 1,000%. The Cowboys have not shown a ton of interest in being a streamlined organization as far as the power structure for quite some time. To me,
they haven't done a lot of winning in quite some time.
Absolutely right.
They've been very streamlined, though. Listen, the coach and then the owner.
Okay, fair.
They've been as streamlined as you possibly can. Maybe being streamlined is not the answer for the organization.
And Kenny, you're right that it's what they've done has not led to the requisite winning. So I'm not saying it's been the right path. And one of my weaknesses, sometimes I try to assign logic to illogical people. The only way drawing this out to me makes logical sense is if they do have a Matt Rule in their back pocket that they are certain they are getting, who is going to come with his own coaching staff in place. If this ends up with Jason Garrett being fired 4 days, 5 days later than he needs to, and then it's like, we want to interview Josh McDaniels, which would then